Bad news for Democrats. Tom Homan kills AOC Ilhan Omar gets blacklisted in Congress. Washington, D.C., 10:00 a.m. The House Oversight Committee chamber was packed, buzzing with anticipation. News crews clustered near the velvet ropes. Viewers nationwide tuned in, expecting another partisan shouting match. But what they got was far more explosive. Tom Homan, the former acting director of U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, stepped into the spotlight. He wasn't there to appease. He wasn't there to play politics. He was there to blow the lid off what he saw as a betrayal at the highest level of government. "Good morning," he began, his voice measured but steely. "My name is Tom Homan. I've served this nation for 34 years. I've chased traffickers, arrested cartel smugglers, and pulled children out of stash houses. But what have I seen in the past years? It isn't just negligence, it's sabotage." The room shifted. At the far end of the dais sat two familiar figures. Congresswomen Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Ilhan Omar. Their expressions stone-faced, but everyone knew they were the target. "Let me be clear," Homan continued. "We have Border Patrol agents working 18-hour shifts, being spit on by activists, vilified in the press, and demonized by members of this very chamber." He turned his gaze directly toward AOC Omar, and I don't say that lightly. "You, Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, called our facilities concentration camps. You, Congresswoman Omar, told your followers to resist ICE. You tweeted maps. You encouraged people to defy lawful orders." AOC interrupted, slamming her hand on the table. "This is political grandstanding." Mr. Homan, he didn't flinch. "This is accountability, Congresswoman, and Americans deserve to hear it." The room went silent. CSP. Ann's feed exploded. Reddit threads lit up. The words "traitors in Congress" trended within minutes. Across the country, the video clips spread like wildfire. Back in the chamber, Homan laid out the numbers. Over the past 12 months, more than 1.9 million border encounters, over 300,000 known gotaways, 1,200 pounds of fentanyl seized. And that's just what we caught. Then he dropped the bombshell. "We have evidence," he said slowly, "that coordination between congressional offices and immigration activist groups has occurred in real time during enforcement operations. Gasps, I have logs, communications, internal memos, ICE operations leaked to outside. Actors compromised." Omar leaned forward. "Those are accusations without foundation. They're facts," Homan snapped, "and I'm prepared to name names." The chairman intervened. "Mr. Homan, please proceed carefully." It was too late. The fire was lit outside. Across social media, hashtags exploded. Hashtag deport the traitors. Hashtag Congress vs. border. Hashtag harm unleashed. The narrative had shifted. For months, conservative pundits had warned of a fifth column inside the halls of power. But now there was a face, a voice, a villain or hero, depending on which side of the aisle you stood. As the hearing adjourned for recess, reporters swarmed the exits. Homer walked out flanked by Marshals. AOC and Omar ducked into private chambers. Outside on the Capitol steps, a crowd had gathered. Flags waved. Voices rose. Some shouted in support, others in rage. It had begun. The spark in the chamber had just ignited. A national blaze. The chamber was suffocating. Not because of the crowd, but the tension. Day 2 of the congressional hearing opened with a deafening quiet. Everyone knew something explosive was coming. No one knew how soon. Tom Homan entered the room flanked by two DHS advisors. His face was steel. He knew the political tide had turned sharply. Since his last testimony, the American public had watched the first session in record numbers. Now millions were live streaming the second. Reddit threads had exploded overnight. Memes rage. Hashtags like hashtag #FireAOC now and hashtag Ilhan Insights were trending nationally. Chairman Buckley banged the gavel. "This committee is now in session. We resume testimony on the state of immigration enforcement at the southern border." "Mr. Homan, you may proceed." Tom stood placed a thick file onto the table, and looked around the room. His words dropped like anvils. Yesterday I spoke of duty. Today I speak of betrayal. A murmur ran through the gallery. The betrayal isn't from traffickers nor smugglers. It's from this very chamber. He turned to face Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Ilhan Omar directly. Certain members of Congress have used their platforms to actively instruct illegal immigrants how to resist and evade federal officers. That is not compassion, that is sedition, gasps. Journalists scrambled for their phones. AOC leaned into her mic. Mr. Homer, are you accusing me of a crime? I am stating facts, he snapped. When a sitting member of Congress live streams instructions for evasion during ICE operations, they aren't just expressing political dissent. They are enabling obstruction of justice. Omar raised her hand calmly. You are twisting humanitarian aid into criminality. Tom slammed his palm on the table. Humanitarian aid doesn't include advising people to hide, destroy documentation, or lie to federal officers. I've got the transcripts. Would you like me to read them? The chairman intervened. Let's maintain decorum. Mr. Homan, continue. He pulled out a document exhibit, a video posted by Ocasio-Cortez during an ICE surge in New York. Her exact words, if ICE knocks, don't answer, film them. Demand a warrant. Tell your neighbors ought resist together. He held up another exhibit B. Rep. Lamar's tweet, no cooperation with oppressors. Community defense means no snitching. Know your rights. Shag. Abolish at the AOC scoffed. That is community self-defense. Tom shot back numb. That is federally punishable incitement. Gasps rippled. The gallery was turning into a theater of war. The rule of law doesn't bend for ideology. I buried 3 agents in my career due to ambushes caused by leaks. We have documented cases of officers being targeted after online mobilization campaigns led by elected officials. Chairman Buckley's face turned pale. Are you suggesting the actions of these members have led to violence? Tom didn't blink. I'm stating that they created the spark, and now this country is burning with confusion about who the law protects. Omar leaned forward. Your anger should be aimed at inhumane policies, not at those of us trying to protect children and families. Tom pointed a finger. Children, the cartel doesn't care about children. They use them. We find rape minors in the desert branded like cattle, and while we beg for legislative tools to stop it, you tweet slogans. The air was electric. No one moved. You use words like Nazis to describe my men. You compare detention centers to concentration camps. Let me tell you something. My agents have pulled dying migrants from the Rio Grande. They bring baby formula from home. They cry when a child dies on their shift. Tom's voice cracked, and you call them monsters. The silence was heavy. Even the reporters hesitated to type. He took a breath. Congresswoman Omar, Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, the rhetoric you've pushed has caused ICE agents, families to be doxxed, offices vandalized. Bomb threats. You call this accountability. I call it a domestic insurgency. The room exploded. Order. Buckley shouted. OC stood, her voice trembling. We represent people who feel ICE has become an unchecked force of oppression. Tom glared. And I represent agents whose children sleep with nightlights because of your words. The tension reached a boiling point. If this chamber won't hold members accountable for inciting resistance against law enforcement, Tom said, eyes sharp, then the people will. The backlash has already begun. He wasn't wrong. Outside protests and counter-protests were colliding. Police had to separate groups chanting, "Deport the traitors and abolish ICE now." Online, Reddit threads analyzed every second of the hearing. Some called for immediate expulsion of AOC and Omar from Congress. Others hailed them as resistance heroes. Tom left the chamber to a standing ovation from half the room. The other half sat in stunned silence. The war of words was no longer metaphorical. This was civil friction in real time, and it had just been televised. The chaos didn't stop at Capitol Hill. as the footage of Tom Homan's rebuke to AOC and Ilhan Omar ricocheted across Reddit, YouTube, and X. A new kind of firestorm erupted. Tom had inadvertently become a lightning rod, pulling political lightning from every direction. The hashtag defend the agents surged across conservative and centrist platforms, but a counter-campaign from progressive influencers, #Shutdown, thus tried to seize the narrative. Reddit's Our Politics became a digital battlefield. Posts supporting Homan were upvoted into visibility, only to be countered within minutes by swarms of comments, decrying his authoritarian rhetoric. Tom Homan, meanwhile, returned to the chamber 2 days later, invited by a bipartisan subcommittee, who now saw him as a necessary voice in the debate. The hearing room buzzed, with even more press than before. But something had changed. Tom wasn't just testifying. Now he was a symbol. He sat across from new panel members, including several fence-sitters, who had avoided staking positions in past immigration debates. But that neutrality had become impossible. America was watching. Chairman Reed began the session. Mr. Homan, would you please revisit your last point regarding Representative Omar's statements to migrant communities? Tom nodded slowly, turning a stack of printed screenshots toward the panel. This is a tweet dated 3 weeks ago. He said, Rep. Omar wrote, if ICE comes knocking, don't answer, don't open the door, don't cooperate, know your rights. Gasps echoed from behind the press line. Several staffers typed frantically. This is not a question of rights awareness. Tom continued, this is coordinated civil disobedience, aimed at undermining lawful enforcement. Representative Clay from Oregon interrupted. Isn't that just informing people of their constitutional protections? Tom didn't blink, telling people not to speak to law enforcement, not to comply with warrants, not to acknowledge legal process. That isn't rights awareness. That's an obstruction in bulk. AOC, seated to the right of the room, leaned into her mic. Mr. Homan, she said sharply, do you understand the fear these communities live under? Families are being ripped apart. Children are being detained without cause. What you call lawful enforcement, they call trauma. Tom responded, unwavering. And what you call activism, I call reckless endangerment. If an ICE agent is harmed during one of these raids because of your messaging, will you accept responsibility? The room exploded, half gasped, half cheered. Ilhan Omar, stone-faced until now, finally spoke. You're blaming us for violence. That's absurd. The violence starts at the policy level, not the protest level. Our job is to resist injustice, not enable blind enforcement. Tom stood up, startling the room. I wore a badge for 34 years. I've pulled kids out of tractor trailers, saved them from traffickers. Stop fentanyl before it hit your streets. I don't need a lecture from someone who called ICE a terrorist organization. More gasp. Chairman Reed slammed the gavel. Order in this room. But the damage was done. Clips of the confrontation flooded social media in real time. Conservative subreddits crowned Tom as the voice of reason. Progressive threads called him a fascist in uniform. Outside the Capitol, protests ignited. In Phoenix, demonstrators gathered under banners that read, Deport fascism, not families. In Florida, counter rallies erupted. Protect our borders, protect our nation. Meanwhile, ICE offices reported a spike in non-compliance. Agents were being refused access to buildings. Migrant communities, armed with printouts of AOC statements, were forming human chains to block detentions. Local police departments became hesitant to coordinate. This isn't just rhetoric anymore, Homeland Security Secretary Angela Freeman told reporters. This is operational paralysis. Tom was asked to appear on every major network: CNN, Fox News, MSNBC. Even Joe Rogan extended an invite. He chose none instead. He released a direct-to-camera statement, posted first on Reddit, then on YouTube. I'm not here to make enemies. I'm here to ask one thing. Who's gonna stand between America and chaos? If every badge is called a villain. The video hit 20 million views in 2 days. Comment sections flooded with Civil War rhetoric. Others pleaded for calm. Ilhan Omar responded with her own live stream. "Let me be clear," she said. "We will not be intimidated into silence by men who confuse control with justice." AOC retweeted it with the caption, "Truth is not treason." As the next hearing approached, the Capitol Police increased their presence, not just because of outside protests, but because intelligence analysts were detecting online threats aimed at all sides in the hearing room. Seats were already being filled by 6A, and America wasn't just watching now. It was picking sides by the morning of the next hearing. The Capitol had transformed into a fortress. Fences, checkpoints, lines of police in riot gear lined the grounds, separating dueling protest camps. On one side, American flags and chants of "secure our borders." On the other hand, handmade signs reading "No ICE, no fear inside." The hearing room felt like the eye of a hurricane. Tom Homan walked in not as a witness this time, but as an invited advisor. He was flanked by DHS security, not for his safety alone, but for what he had come to represent. Chairman Reed began this session. "We'll investigate whether recent statements made by members of this chamber have contributed to the breakdown of lawful immigration enforcement." He didn't say names he didn't need to. Tom was called first. He walked up, placed his palms flat on the witness table, and spoke. "Let me say it straight. When elected officials tell people to resist law enforcement, we don't get peaceful protests. We get flash mobs around ICE vans. We get agents followed home. Families threatened, we get chaos." He turned to the committee. "And don't say it's just a passionate speech, because some of those passionate words ended up on flyers, next to pictures of dead agents." A sharp silence filled the room. Representative Clay tried to interrupt, but Tom wasn't finished. "You want proof?" he said, pulling a document from his folder. "This is a declassified DHS memo. Last week alone, we had 12 coordinated tip-offs. Migrant networks warned in advance of ICE enforcement. -1 came from activists directly, quoting tweets from sitting members of Congress." He placed the memo on the desk. "Your words don't just land on the floor of Congress. Anymore, they land in encrypted WhatsApp groups and Telegram channels used by coyotes." AOC leaned into her mic. "Are you implying our words are weapons?" Tom stared at her. "No." He said, "I'm saying they're coordinates." The tension cracked. Committee members whispered. News anchors shifted in their seats. But the real storm wasn't inside. Outside video walls streamed the hearing to hundreds of protesters on both sides. When Tom uttered the words "their coordinates," it echoed like a battle cry across online communities. In Texas, sheriffs began issuing public statements of support for ICE in Portland. Activists called for OC and Omar to be censored on Reddit. The political subforums fractured. Longtime moderators stepped down. Threads were locked. Threats of doxing and physical retaliation began surfacing. At the White House press secretary, Jonas Little, issued a rare midday briefing. "The president urges restraint." He said, "Freedom of speech is not freedom from consequence." Let's be clear. Coordinated noncompliance is not civil disobedience. It is sedition. The room gasped sedition. The word hit every network. Chiron AOC fired back with a tweet. "When fascism knocks, they'll call it law and order. We will not yield." Ilhan Omar retweeted it with, "We are the firewall." Tom's second statement was even sharper, delivered again through his own platform. He stared straight into the camera. "I've buried many friends who wore the badge. This isn't about politics anymore. It's about whether we still believe in a country that has borders, laws, and the will to defend both." That night, things escalated in downtown. Law protesters clashed with ICE agents outside a holding facility. Bottles thrown, fires lit. 3 arrests, 1 hospitalized. In Miami, a counter-protest surrounded a city hall where Omar was set to speak. She canceled. The Department of Homeland Security issued a Level 3 alert for political unrest linked to immigration enforcement. Reddit threads became ground zero. for civil discourse and for calls to action. Some urged peaceful protest. Others wanted escalation. Several users were banned. Others became icons meanwhile. A quiet committee motion moved through Congress. A proposal censured AOC and Ilhan Omar for incitement, resulting in operational disruption. It passed in the subcommittee. It was heading to the floor. America was no longer debating immigration. It was debating division itself. And Tom Homan, once a name on a desk, was now the match dropped on the fuse. The sun rose over Washington, D.C. with an eerie stillness. News helicopters circled the Capitol like vultures, waiting to capture whatever history might unfold. Inside the chamber, the air was different, thicker, anticipatory. This wasn't just another hearing. It was Judgment Day. The motion was simple on paper, explosive in reality. A resolution to censure Representatives Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Ilhan Omar for speech contributing to the incitement of actions interfering with lawful federal immigration enforcement. Tom Homan sat in the gallery, flanked by veterans and Gold Star families, not as a speaker this time, but as a symbol. The chamber was packed. So was the world outside. Live feeds exploded across Reddit, X, YouTube, even Twitch. Hashtags trended within seconds. Hashtag sends your vote, hashtag AOC. So men, hashtag American trial. Speaker Dolphin opened, "This is not a trial. It is a reckoning." He continued, laying out the framework, how words had fueled real-world consequences. The hearings, the memos, the violence then, the video clips, spliced together from the last 6 months. AOC rallying. Shut it down, Ilhan Omar. They do not deserve our cooperation. Then the aftermath. ICE vans ambushed protesters, pounding on windshields. Border agents surrounded their homes. Flyers with names, coordinates, threats. The House chamber was silent, the kind of silence that vibrates. Then came the defense. AOC rose, eyes blazing. She didn't look around for support. She didn't need to. If you censure us for telling the truth, then the truth becomes treason. And I will not apologize for standing up for the voiceless. Not now, not ever. Applause burst from the gallery, quickly shut down by the gavel. Ilhan Omar followed. Her voice is low, deliberate. This is not about borders. It's about fear, and you fear the fact that we have the courage to say what others won't. You want obedience, we offer resistance. The chamber shifted. Lines weren't political anymore. They were cultural, generational, almost spiritual. Tom Homan was asked if he wanted to speak. During the open comment window, he stood slowly. "I buried agents last year. One took his own life after his home was firebombed. The other was shot while delivering a court order. I'm not here to silence anyone, but let's be real, if you pour gasoline long enough, you're responsible for the fire." Gasped some cheers. Some books. Reddit exploded. One thread titled, "Did Homan just seal the vote?" received 20,000 upvotes in under an hour. Another read, "Free speech or domestic incitement? The AOC paradox." At 2:36 p.m., the vote was called. Members stood one by one. Yes, no, yes, no, abstain. The final tally: 221 in favor, 211 opposed, 3 abstentions. The motion passed. AOC and Omar were officially censured. No removal, no silencing, but a mark official, historic. AOC stood still, defiant. "This won't age well." Ilhan Omar added, "You fear the change because you know it's coming." Tom Homan remained seated, hands folded, jaw set. The chamber buzzed with fallout. Outside, protests grew louder, more passionate, more dangerous. In Portland, another ICE building was vandalized. In Houston, a man was arrested, attempting to enter a federal facility, armed with a pipe bomb. On Reddit, a new thread topped the charts. Civil War 2.0, our political theater, where this ends. The subreddit, our politics, was temporarily locked due to extraordinary volume and moderation challenges. News networks scrambled to reshape their narratives. Left-leaning pundits framed the vote as the rise of fascism. Conservative commentators called it a long overdue correction. But the biggest shock wasn't on television. It was online a leak, a Homeland Security breach, revealed and encrypted. Slack conversation between mid-level congressional aides. It included this line. They knew the censure would trigger unrest. They wanted it. Controlled chaos equals controlled reform. The post went viral. Conspiracies ignited. Theories multiplied. Was this whole thing orchestrated? Is Homan being used? Is AOC playing for D-chess? Tom stayed quiet. He issued no statements. Gave no interviews, but one grainy photo went viral. It showed him alone on the Capitol steps, watching the crowds, one hand on his chest, the other holding a folded document. The Century Resolution. Caption: the man who split the room. The morning after the Senate vote, America did not awaken, it boiled. News cycles didn't change topics. They multiplied from New York to Nevada. Protests surged, border towns became flashpoints. Federal agents doubled their presence across ICE facilities, and Tom Homan, the man many called the accidental symbol of law and order, found himself walking a razor's edge between patriot and pariah. Social media was a civil war zone. Reddit Our Politics was back online, barely moderated, now a battleground. Comment chains reached thousands of replies. Some users called for marches. Others whispered about resistance. One post reached 50,000 upvotes in a day. They censored AOC and Omar, but didn't censor a government that cages children. Underneath another when they silence radicals. They fear revolution in parallel. Conservative subreddits rallied. Homer became a hero. He faced the mob. He stood for the badge. He spoke for every family that locks their doors. At night, Telegram groups exploded. Encrypted servers posted video breakdowns of every hearing moment. TikToks clipped Tom's statement into cinematic monologues, gaining millions of views. But the digital storm was only the beginning. Washington escalates inside Capitol Hill. Battle lines hardened. Speaker Dalton called for a special committee to audit communications between elected officials and activist organizations. It was dubbed the Firewall Review. AOC and Omar were summoned again, this time not for a vote but for accountability. They arrived flanked by supporters and legal teams. Omar wore white, AOC wore black. The symbolism was unmistakable. Chairman Redford, moderate Democrat turned hawk, opened the session. We're not investigating speech. We're investigating coordination. The first exhibit, a leaked email thread between a congressional aide and an NGO. Based in Arizona, the subject line, upcoming ICE activity confirmed, alerts for sharing. Tom Homan was called to interpret the attached enforcement map. This is operational data, he said. It shouldn't be in civilian hands. If it got there, it means someone in the government walked it out the door. Omar's lawyer objected, but the damage was done. The fallout begins. In Los Angeles, protesters blocked freeway exits near an ICE transport convoy. 3 agents were injured. 15 arrests in Phoenix. A courthouse window was smashed. Molotov cocktails were found nearby. The FBI declared a domestic risk escalation tier 2. Meanwhile, an anonymous leak from within ICE confirmed what many feared. Morale is at an all-time low. Dozens of agents requested transfers to non-enforcement roles. In a closed session, Homeland Security briefed the president. Sir, if rhetoric continues at this pace, the next rally will not end with chants. It will end with fire. The president paused, then asked what happens if Homan resigns. The room fell silent. Tom's decision that night. Tom Homan sat alone in his D.C. apartment, watching footage of clashes. Outside an ICE center in Houston, he saw the signs with his name. Some praised, others burned him in effigy. He turned off the TV, opened a notebook, and began writing. The next morning, his team uploaded a letter, public, unfiltered. I am not a politician. I am not a hero. I am a man who buried friends, wearing the same badge I wear. And if my voice has become too loud to keep the peace, then I will step aside, but I will not be silent. To every American, we are on a precipice. You either believe laws matter or you don't. If you believe in order, stand up. If you believe in anarchy, Keep tearing it all down, but stop pretending the two can coexist. The letter broke the internet. CNN called it a resignation. Fox News called it a call to arms. Tom refused interviews until one. He agreed to appear on the American Ledger, a neutral Sunday program. Seated across from anchor Janine Weldon, he spoke clearly, "Is this your final public act?" Mr. Homan Tom looked into the camera. "It depends. Will Congress listen now? Or will they wait until we lose another agent? Or another courthouse?" The vote that followed in the shadow of Tom's statement. Congress reconvened. The Firewall Committee issued its findings. Two congressional staffers were found to have shared restricted ICE movement schedules. One activist NGO received funds indirectly from a PAC linked to progressive members. At least, for encrypted message channels were traced to Capitol. IP addresses censure was no longer the ceiling. Representative Manning RF. L proposed a motion to suspend L. C and Omar pending a full ethics investigation. The chamber caught fire. Democrats cried suppression. Republicans cried sedition. Tom Homan watched from the gallery. In the end, the motion failed by the votes. But the scars remain aftermath. The protests calmed not because of resolution, but exhaustion. AOC launched a new campaign. Voices Not Vengeance. Omar pivoted to foreign policy. Tom Homan moved to Texas. He opened a nonprofit for fallen border agents. Families Reddit's communities never quite recovered. Moderators changed, rules tightened. The discourse fractured, but a pin thread still remains in our politics. The day words became weapons. The Homan AOC conflict underneath tens of thousands of comments. Some call it the moment America woke up. Others call it the day it came undone. Either way, one truth echoes from it all. Words build nations and tear them down.